Carolyn Leavitt, much like her boss, has been accused by critics of avoiding accountability. They argue that when tough questions arise and spin no longer works, she tends to cut exchanges short rather than directly address the issue. That perception grew after a recent Fox appearance where she acknowledged challenges facing the administration, followed by a press conference in which similar difficulties were discussed. Some observers believe the administration has been trying to shift attention away from controversies, including renewed scrutiny around the Epstein files, while also facing mounting questions about escalating tensions with Iran. Ahead of Trump's major speech, critics say Leavitt's remarks unintentionally highlighted broader concerns about the direction of the presidency, particularly before she was pressed on foreign policy issues that appeared to end the exchange abruptly.
And of everyday Americans who are directly benefiting from his policies and making a few new policy announcements as well to continue tackling the affordability crisis that Joe Biden created 1 year ago. And the president will be talking about the positive metrics we have seen and moving forward towards making life again more affordable and prosperous for all Americans.
So that's going to...
A year ago in 2025, Joe Biden was not president. Donald Trump was. So if critics argue that conditions have worsened over the past year, they say responsibility lies with the current administration. They point to fluctuating tariff announcements, economic uncertainty, and reported job losses, including manufacturing jobs that were promised to return, as evidence that recent challenges stem from Trump's policies. From that perspective, frustration about the state of the country should be directed at the White House, not previous leadership. Critics also argue that Carolyn Leavitt appears unprepared when addressing questions about escalating tensions abroad, particularly regarding a potential conflict that Trump has hinted at. Some commentators have even speculated that renewed foreign policy aggression could serve as a distraction from ongoing scrutiny related to Jeffrey Epstein, a claim raised by figures like Ro Khanna. According to those critics, that context helps explain why Leavitt was pressed on the issue and why she appeared unwilling or unable to engage with the question directly.
Carson Carney, you have now been officially informed that you have 100% of the Epstein files.
Well, that's just wrong. And it's not just Thomas Massie and I who are now calling it out, not just Marjorie Taylor Greene who's calling it out. People like Tim Burchett, people like Nancy Mace are saying this is just not transparent. Even Senator Kennedy is saying this is not transparent. And the reality is they're muddying the water. I mean, instead of focusing on people like Lutnick, people like the ambassador in Turkey, people like the Stephen Bannon, who had actual correspondence or relationships with Epstein, they're just putting out every public figure. And not only is that letting off people who actually may have been involved in illegal or immoral behavior, but it's also breeding such cynicism because, as your monologue showed, there are people like President Obama who didn't get anywhere close to this, who are decent, who are moral, who believe in the rule of law and America's character. And for them to try to conflate everyone is a terrible disservice to democracy.
Critics argue that the administration may be escalating foreign tensions at a time when scrutiny around the Epstein files is intensifying. Some believe Congress should reassert its constitutional authority over war powers, just as courts have pushed back on executive authority in other areas, to ensure that no president can unilaterally initiate military action without proper oversight. Trump has previously emphasized that he relies on his own judgment in decision-making, a stance that critics say raises concerns about checks and balances. They also point to last year's military operation, referred to as Operation Midnight Hammer, which the administration described as a major success. However, subsequent reporting suggested that Iranian nuclear capabilities were not fully eliminated. In fact, comments made on Fox by Steve Witkoff indicated Iran could still be close to developing weapons-grade material. That contrast has led some observers to question the administration's earlier claims and to wonder why renewed military rhetoric is surfacing now. When pressed on those inconsistencies, critics say Carolyn Leavitt struggled to provide clarity before ending the exchange abruptly.
You mentioned Operation Midnight Hammer, the president touting the success of the military. One of the things that the president Iran nuclear sites were completely obliterated. We heard from Steve Witkoff just a few days ago also saying that Iran was maybe just a week away from getting access to bomb-making material. How would they square those two statements? What exactly happened here? Were they strikes just not as effective, or were they able to build more quickly than the administration had hoped?
No, the president's initial statement, and the president reiterated that True Social, that Operation Midnight Hammer was an overwhelmingly successful mission that did, in fact, obliterate Iran's nuclear facilities. That is not just verified by the President of the United States, but also the International Atomic Energy Commission as well. That does not mean that Iran may never try again to establish a nuclear program that could directly threaten the United States and our allies abroad, and that's what the President wants to ensure can never happen again. And just one more note, but with respect to Iran before I run into my morning meeting, President Trump's first option is always diplomacy, but as he has shown, he is willing to use the lethal force of the United States military if necessary. So it's always, the president is always the final around here, and I've seen a lot of sensationalist reporting over the past day that is just completely untrue. And anyone speculating to the media, hiding behind an anonymous source, pretending to know what President Trump is thinking or a decision he will make with respect to action against Iran has no idea what they're talking about.
When Carolyn Leavitt was pressed about Operation Midnight Hammer, the administration's earlier claims don't seem to line up with the current rhetoric. Months ago, officials described the strike as a complete success that eliminated Iran's nuclear threat. Now, figures like Steve Witkoff are suggesting Iran may still be close to weapons capability. Critics see that as a major contradiction. And when Leavitt was asked to reconcile it, she appeared unwilling to engage. Some commentators argue that the renewed push toward confrontation with Iran raises serious questions about motive, especially amid ongoing scrutiny related to the Epstein files and Trump's slipping approval ratings. They believe Congress should revisit a war powers resolution to ensure stronger oversight before any military escalation. A previous attempt narrowly failed in the Senate, missing a key Republican vote. With a major speech looming, critics predict a highly combative address, possibly met with Democratic protest or alternative programming from online commentators. Rather than simply attending and remaining silent, some argue Democrats should present a clear counter-message. In their view, escalating foreign conflict amid domestic controversy would not be strength. It would be distraction.
The public rejecting Trump's record on the economy and affordability. Now, Friday, the Supreme Court rejecting his trade war power grab. And you have those elections that we were talking about at the table, a rejection of Trump's policies, embracing Democrats instead, some of them quite liberal. Now, MAGA allies say Trump still has his own special loyal voting bloc, and you'll hear about that if you talk about the facts that I'm mentioning, that he is historically unpopular, that people don't like Trump, that they didn't vote for him most of the time. Those are facts. Then the young men who did go towards Trump, which was unusual based on how younger voters tend to come out, they're not all staying, but some of them have started to lean blue in those races I mentioned. Now, that didn't cover the whole country, but they do match a return to the norm. Trump is unpopular. Voters have usually preferred the alternative when offered. So it's actually, I got to tell you, pretty remarkable that Trump and his allies have spun a long-running, mediocre electoral hand into claims of this mass realignment, and that tech and business elites seem to perceive and fear that there might be a MAGA permanent majority, that after Trump's lame duck term, which is about 3 years left, they would still have to contend with all of this rather than the measurable reality, which is that Donald Trump has been and remains a largely unpopular leader, now an unpopular lame duck president. And some of his supporters might have gotten kind of high on their own supply, because you can judge for yourself, but we checked the tape. They did seem almost genuinely emotionally shocked that the numbers I just showed you, which are long running, led to their expected result, a 2025 rout, when it was entirely in line with this long, unpopular Trump track record.
How are you feeling this morning? Like, yeah, I can relate.
Look, last night was a disaster.
Last night was a total and complete disaster.
It was an electoral blowout. The results in New Jersey were disastrous. The results in Virginia were terrible.
You destroyed the Republican Party for a generation.
Republicans did not have a good day. So anyone who says, well, not really that, but no, it was bad.
It was not a good day. And maybe for some it was a type of whiplash if you weren't tracking that Trump had this long-term weak support.
Donald Trump is facing what many describe as a historically unpopular presidency, and critics say the pressure appears to be weighing on him. With a major speech ahead, some expect a volatile performance and worry less about the optics of a meltdown and more about what decisions could follow it. We'll be covering all of it, including Carolyn Leavitt's role in defending the administration. If you want to support the coverage, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, and drop a blue heart in the comments if you made it to the end. And until next time, I will see you soon.